Synopsis of the book The Power of Now, written by Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart begins the book by describing a part of his past where a spiritual transformation happened to him and he was spiritually awakened. He says that he was a few days away from his 29th birthday and he had finished his studies in London and he was depressed and everything was disgusting to him, especially his own life. As he had many suicidal thoughts that night, he said to himself that I cannot stand myself anymore. After saying this sentence, he paused for a moment and said, how can I not stand with myself? Are I and myself too? And there, for a moment, everything seemed like a vacuum. I don't remember what happened, but next day I woke up to the sound of a bird, and it was as if I had never heard the sound before. All the things that were disgusting to me before were beautiful and new. He spent 2 years in London parks with this happy feeling. He says that the intense pressure and suffering he suffered that night made him not recognize himself as his sad self, and that sad self was once broken. The book of The Power of Now is the questions and answers of Tolle's conferences and classes that were collected, and all of them were after his awakening. He says that transformation will not happen until we recognize the false self within ourselves. First, he explains clairvoyance, which is the discovery of our original nature, that we are one with the world, or in other words, becoming one with being. But what is being? Being is the essence of everything and everyone, regardless of the life form that is subject to birth and death, or regardless of name and anything. Being is a word that is defined as Lord. Being is unlimited. Being is our nature. Being is the nature of everything. There is a small step from being as a word to being as an experience. The biggest obstacle of this experience is identifying oneself with the mind, which is constantly making noise and doesn't allow us to reach the inner stillness that is connected to being. This veil of thoughts creates the illusion of separation, and there is one me, one you, and one other. And we forget the fact that we are one with the whole universe, so that we may even believe that we are one, but we don't experience it. He doesn't reject the mind, but introduces it as a useful tool, of course, if it is at our disposal. While we are at the disposal of the mind, this is a problem. We are not our mind, but mind is a tool at our disposal. If we can solve a table or build an atomic bomb, it doesn't mean that we are using our mind. It means that the mind is interested in solving problems. But can we turn off the mind? If not, it means that the mind is using us and not us using the mind. When we understand that we are not that thinking mind, we can observe the mind, and then a higher level of consciousness is activated, so that we understand that we are far beyond thoughts, and our awakening begins here. The voice we hear in the mind is not necessarily related to the situation we are in now, but our mind is conditioned and is looking at the present or the future with the eyes of our past. And it has a completely distorted view. And this voice can be a strong torture. We should try to witness this voice without judging it. Little by little, we realize that the sound is there and we are here. It means that we are separated from each other. We become aware of that voice and ourselves as witness of this thought. This is where the mind loses its power, because when we identified ourselves with the thought, we were giving it strength. But now there is no more power to mind. when the mind is unpowered, we experience mindlessness, which may be only a few seconds at first, but gradually becomes longer. The next step after observing mind is directing attention to the present moment, which is a meditation practice. It means to pay attention to whatever we are doing. For example, if we are washing our hands, pay attention to the sound of water, the smell of soap, and the sensation of contact with water. So, the only vital step towards enlightenment is to learn not to identify ourselves with our minds. He says that thinking involuntarily is a kind of addiction. Addiction is when we lose the power to stop, and that stream becomes stronger than us, and this addiction gives us a false sense of pleasure. Thinking is necessary for life, but we should only use it when we need it and then let it go. Thinking involuntarily causes leakage of life force. Mind is a small aspect of consciousness. It cannot survive without consciousness, while consciousness doesn't need the mind to survive. Clairvoyance means that we can use our mind when we need it and leave it aside in other cases. It means to be in fluctuation between the mind and the mindless, and it is only in this form that the mind acquires the power of creative visualization. Artists and scientists found the first steps to solve the problems from the stillness and mindlessness within them, and then their mind shaped it. The mind or thought plays a secondary role in the creative process, and that is why most scientists are not creative, because they do not know how to stop thinking. But scientists like Einstein knew. The mind is not only thought, but also includes feelings and all reaction patterns. The feeling is the intersection of mind and body, or in other the reaction of ourselves to our mind is feeling. The more we know ourselves as one with our judgments and likes and dislikes, the stronger the aggressive energy of these feelings is. If we cannot feel our emotions, we experience these emotions at the physical level as a disease, or if a strong and unconscious feeling is repeated, it can cause things to happen to us in the outside world. For example, if we have an anger inside us that we didn't express and we are not aware of it, we constantly deal with angry people who attacked us physically and verbally without any reason, because this anger energy that is inside us causes others anger. Although we say the feeling is the reaction of the mind in the body, sometimes the mind says something when deciding, and our feeling is exactly the opposite. Eckhart Tolle says to trust our feeling in such cases because it reveals the feeling of the relative truth of the mind. Now, we must understand the unconscious activity of the mind in such a way to avoid causing illness or unpleasant events in the outside world. For this, we must know that every mental activity, whether conscious or unconscious, creates an emotional reflection in our body, and we must allow this feeling to be. In other words, as we said, for thoughts, to only witness them and not give them strength and not accompany them, let's do the same for feelings. In this way, we become aware of all unknowing things that exist in us. To observe the feeling, we must get used to asking ourselves, what is going on inside us at this moment? What do I feel? And just watch the answer. Don't analyze it. If there's no feeling, focus deeper inside. This is the path to being. An emotion represents a reinforced thought pattern that is trying to take control of us. If we are not present, it succeeds, and little by little we become that feeling, and this faulty cycle is created between thought and feeling, which reinforce each other. If we call these feelings emotional pain, our mind is constantly trying to put a temporary cover on the emotional pain, but the mental effort increases the pain. It's like a police officer is looking for a criminal who happens to be the criminal of the head of the police department. So, we can only get rid of emotional pain or our emotions when the mind is pulled down from the position of power. These emotions, we say, are negative emotions because love, happiness, and peace are beyond emotions and mind. All of us have experienced moments when the mind has become silent for some reason. For example, due to seeing extraordinary beauty, physical exertion, or extreme fear. These moments are short because the mind starts its activity immediately. These moments are the moments of presence in the present moment. We must know that happiness is different from pleasure. Happiness comes from within, while pleasure comes from something external that leaves us after a short period of time, or its absence becomes painful for us. This explanation is true for love as well. True love doesn't hurt or turn into hate. But what we usually experience as love is an addictive dependency that fluctuates between love and hate after the euphoria of romantic relationships. Therefore, even before awakening and awareness, one can experience fleeting moments of happiness and true love, but the mind comes and blocks them. Buddha says that the source of pain and suffering is desire and need, and source of need is the mind that seeks happiness outside. When the mind is present, even our longing for liberation, awakening, and insight is a need, the result of which is pain. So we must be present and be the observer of our mind. Ever since man has degraded from his position and lost his consciousness, he sees himself separated from the original source and others. In short, as long as we know ourselves as one with our mind and we are in ignorance, there is pain, or in other words, emotional pain, which is the main cause of physical pain and illness. The most minor emotional pains are self-blame, guilt, anger, depression, jealousy, and so on. Pain is a kind of non-acceptance or unknowing resistance to what is. The intensity of the pain depends on our resistance to the present. The mind is elusive from the present moment because mind and time are inseparable. Time means past and future. Let's assume that there were no humans on the planet, there were only plants and animals. Does time have a past and future? There was nothing but now. We, humans, need time and history to function in this world, and if they dominate us, pain will arise. To maintain its power, the mind covers the present with the past and future. Existence is the present moment. Say yes to existence so that existence will be ready to serve you. Every emotional pain that we experience leaves a residue of itself that these residues gather and make a statue of pain. Statue of pain can be active or dormant. In sad people, this pain statue is active most of the time. When the pain statue is ready to be awakened, even a thought or a disinterested comment from someone can activate the pain statue. These statues of pain sometimes attack our loved ones and sometimes make us feel negative about everything. They can cause illness or accidents or even force their host to commit suicide. We should be aware of any signs of sadness, which can be a sign of statue of the pain which is waking up. As soon as the statue of pain woke up, we should grab its wrist. The statue of pain, like any living thing, wants to survive and needs energy, and it gets its energy from pain. It means that when it wakes up, it demands more pain, either for ourselves or to become a victim or to cause pain to others. If we don't want to cause pain for ourselves and others, let's not create more time. That is, we should not create more time than what is needed for the practical aspects of our life. In other words, let's make the present moment the main focus of our life. Let's accept the present moment as if we choose it ourselves, and then we will see the miracles will begin. When the statue of pain starts to wake up, for example, a person we know kindly suddenly turns into a nasty, an alien creature, or we ourselves change at the same moment. These can be signs of awakening the statue of pain. Other symptoms are annoyance, restlessness, bad temper, desire to hurt others, anger, aggression, depression, or the need to create a sad story. We either want to suffer or to cause pain to other, and there's no difference between the two. If we are aware of this pattern will disappear. We need to shine the light of awareness on this dark issue so that we don't have to live it over and over again. When we see the statue of pain, we should focus on it. He can no longer identify himself as us. It breaks apart. This means presence. It means that we have achieved the power of the present moment. The statue of pain can continue to be present for some time after waking up, like a spinning wheel that takes a while to stop spinning when we stop spinning it. And this continuation of the life of the statue of pain may also cause physical pain, but it is temporary, and by continuing to be present in the present moment, they will all disappear. Continuous conscious attention causes pain to become a fuel for awareness, and this means alchemy, the transformation of suffering into awareness. In short, let's recognize and accept the symbol of pain, but do not let our feeling turn into thoughts, which means don't analyze or judge the feeling. The awakening of the statue of pain is more common for women before the menstrual period. The next issue is fear. Psychological fear is different from the instinctive reaction of avoiding danger. Psychological fear is related to an incident that may happen in the future, not what is happening now. We are in the present, while our mind is in the future, and this gap creates anxiety. And all this is caused by the false inner self, which is made by our mind. This inner self is afraid of death and annihilation. Even if we have made a mistake, the me inside sees it as a threat of destruction, and doesn't allow us to accept our mistakes, and arguments and war occur. Now, if we don't see ourselves as one mind, the defensiveness and aggressiveness will disappear, and we can easily express our feelings, and the unconscious obsession with being right will disappear. We must consciously look at every defensive posture to see what we are defending. The next thing is perfectionism of me inside, which always sees itself as incomplete, and for this reason it seeks wealth, job, social status, knowledge, appearance, and such things to calm down for a moment, while we are none of these. We understand this at the time of death, but the secret of existence is to be able to die from these concepts before death and understand that there is no death. Mind is a wonderful tool, but when we know ourselves with that one, all the problems, fears, and needs arise. That mind is arise from the inner me and takes over all our lives. The main key to getting rid of the inner me is to end the illusion of time. Past and future are imagination of present moments. The past is the memories of the present moments that have passed, and the future is the reflection of the mind from the present moments in the future. When there is a danger, the past and future are unconsciously removed and replaced by a conscious presence. Those who are fascinated by dangerous activities such as mountain climbing, car racing, and the like, do not know that these dangers forcefully brings them to the present moment, and it is the feeling of beingness that gives them a sense of vitality. The present moment is the way to reach the spiritual dimension. On the way to God, there is no bigger obstacle than time. My mind doesn't know you and only knows information, labels, and judgments about you. Only beingness knows directly. Beingness means being present in the present moment. Beingness is the same as existence. Let's pay attention to the past and future whenever needed and practice the rest of the moment to turn our attention away from the past and the future in everyday life so that we can get out of the dimension of time. Whenever we can observe our mind, then we won't get stuck in it anymore and we will be present witnesses. Do not judge and analyze the situation that occurs. We should see our own emotions and reactions and do not make them personal problems in order to reach the presence of the resident witness. When a situation occurs, we react unconsciously and our emotions get involved. We become that reaction or that feeling. In fact, these feelings and reactions are from our minds, and we are actually giving them power by identifying ourselves with them. But if we can observe the mind or the emotions of our reactions, the mind loses its power. Observing the mind opens the dimension of timelessness. This work means the same as taking power from the mind, and this makes the times when we really need the mind to be more focused. Minoan divided time into two categories, clock time and psychological time. Hourly time means we use the past for things in the present. For example, we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Psychological time means that, for example, we criticize ourselves for past mistakes and feel regret and guilt. We use clock time and we must get rid of mental time. With this interpretation, the goal means to wait for something in the future to be happy when we reach that thing, and this is psychological time, and it should be stopped. Otherwise, we lose the vitality, freshness, and sense of wonder. Of course, the future is usually better than the past, but it depends on how much we were in the present moment and solve the problems of the past with the power of the present moment. Even our perception of the future is an inner part of our awareness of the present moment. If we carry the burden of the past, we imagine and experience the future as the past. The past continues in the present moment without our presence, so it's important to know how to know our consciousness in the present moment and, if necessary, to change it because it determines our future. It is the degree of presence in the present moment that determines how we are aware. Stress, tension, and mental pressure are caused by fear and are caused by focusing too much on the future and guilt. And guilt and sadness and discomfort are caused by focusing on the past. If we don't have more presence in the present moment, problems will only change their form. How can we experience being in the moment when we don't feel good in that present moment? We must understand the difference between life conditions, which are the product of time, and life itself, which is the present moment. Life is real, and life conditions are mental phenomena. Let's see if we have a problem at that moment. Let's find that problem and not problem of tomorrow or 10 minutes later. When there are many problems, there's no room for solutions. Look around us and feel everything, from our breath to the color, smell and sound. Just feel them without judgment. Let's accept everything as it is. I may say that I'm fine at the moment, but the problems are still there. Problems are actually situations that we can either deal with and solve in the present moment, or they are unsolvable and we have to accept them as a part of being in the present moment and let them go. Those who get angry when they hear the statement that their problems are illusions are those who identify themselves with problems and don't know who they are without problems. In order to understand how psychological time dominates us, we must ask the question, do I feel real? Do I feel real and light happiness from what I'm doing? If the answer is negative, it means that the present moment is covered by time. In order to feel fresh and light, we don't need to change the work, but we need to change how we do it. Instead of focusing on what we get from doing the work, focus on doing the work. It means not to be attached to the result of the work, which is called karma yoga. In the absence of mental time, our sense of existence originates from our being and not from our individual past. With the sense of being, we still tend to pursue external goals and we are eager to pursue them. Only illusory expectations for what will happen in the future will disappear. When we are aware of not being present in the present moment, it's a great success. We go back and forth between this awareness and unawareness, presence and becoming one with the mind until finally the awareness of presence prevails. The levels of unawareness are also different. For example, the common types of unawareness are boredom, restlessness, unhappiness, and nervousness that many people unconsciously try to silence this pain with work, food, television, unnecessary shopping, drugs, etc. But when these activities are done without awareness, they take the form of addiction and compulsion. And it is as if the pain button has been pressed. When these challenges occur, we can use these challenges to become aware and wake up or go into the deep sleep of ignorance. The interesting thing is that it is how we deal with these challenges that show our level of awareness and not how long we can sit with our eyes closed or what images we see during meditation. When we are not satisfied with a situation or a person, we can either change the situation or talk to that person. Or, if we can't accept it, stop being negative and be aware of our feelings and thoughts. Inner negativity is very contagious, and if those around us are not aware and awake and do not have safety, their negativity will be awakened and strengthened. Complaining about the weather, living conditions, or any situation is not accepting what it is. When we complain, we put ourselves in the place of the victim. We should be aware of ourselves, leave or accept that situation. Any action is better than nothing, even if it is a mistake, and learn from it. If we learn from it, it is not a mistake. If we get stuck in a situation, we don't learn a lesson. Waiting is one of the tricks of the mind to deny the present moment, and ignorance is considered normal. They asked Eckhart Tolle whether we should identify ourselves as the past unconscious. In other words, don't past experience of unconsciousness help? Eckhart Tolle says that everything we need to know from our unconscious past comes to us in the form of challenges in the present. The power of the present moment is the power of our presence, or the freedom of consciousness from the frame of mind and thought. An exercise to understand the state of presence is to ask ourselves with closed eyes, what is the next thought that is going to come to me? There's no thought for a while because we are in presence. But as soon as our awareness of the present moment decreases, thoughts rush in. The next exercise is to try to feel inside our body, which will be explained more later. Previously, we introduced a type of expectation that draws our attention to the future as an obstacle to being in the present moment. But there is a type of expectation that means being alert, waiting for something to happen every moment. Like the story of Jesus about 5 girls who were supposed to wait for the groom, and one of them will become the groom's bride. But the girls didn't keep enough oil in the lamp, which means waiting and preparing for anything happen in the present moment. And as a result, they didn't notice the presence of the groom, which means the present moment, and they missed the wedding celebration. Eckhart Tolle says that perception means awareness and thinking means consideration. Sometimes there are short moments between perception and thinking, which is mindlessness, or absolute presence, which is called satori. The greater the gap between perception, which is awareness, and thinking, the more conscious we are. For example, we can only describe the beauty of a flower, but because we are not present, we don't understand the beauty and we are not aware of its essence and sanctity. In fact, we have given different forms to awareness. For example, if we name a fish in aquarium, issue a birth certificate for it, and then it is eaten by another fish, we consider that incident a tragedy. While it was we who took a part in a dynamic process and gave it a separate entity. When consciousness takes a form, it becomes thought and matter. And in fact, this is how the world came into being and continues to come into being. So, when it says to be the witness of the mind, it means to be witness of the form. And at that moment, there's consciousness that can shape and create. Or in broader form, when consciousness is pulled out of the form, it can be the end of the world, because there will be no more form and matter. Consuming sedatives, alcoholic beverages, and drugs delay the onset of awareness. These help us get rid of the tortures of the mind a little, but they prevent the presence of awareness to go beyond the mind. If we cannot bring consciousness to presence, consciousness continues to grow in other forms, but it is no longer us and we haven't experienced it. Silence is a stronger manifestation than presence. Silence can bring us to the stillness. Men of God, like Christ, were those who realized the divine essence within themselves. When Christ says, "I am before Abraham was," it refers to the consciousness and vital essence within oneself. It is timeless. He doesn't say "I was" or "I will," but say that "I am before Abraham was." Do not personalize the men of God, the holy mothers, the enlightened masters. As individuals, they are nothing special. You are attached to the teacher because you are in the presence and you were able to notice the presence of this person. There are also false teachers. If you think that only your teacher is the manifestation of God, who are you? Use the teacher's presence to restore an identity beyond name and form and for more presence, and not for to be mine or to be yours. In presence, there is no mine or yours. Presence is one and only. We should not depend on a teacher. The mind absorbs all the consciousness and turns it into mental contents, which makes our identity no longer rooted in beingness and becomes a mental structure that is vulnerable and needy. Let's turn attention away from thought and direct it to our body. It means to close our eyes and pay attention to the inside of our body. Can we feel the aliveness of each part of our body? The more we pay attention, the more we feel. This is a good exercise to regain awareness from the mind. We may feel mild at first, but we must continue the practice. Don't fight with the body, because we can find the truth by paying attention to the body. The body that we see is a thin veil that the beingness is inside. If we constantly pay attention to our bodies, we connect to the present moment. When doing anything, we should try to pay attention to the inside of the body and take our attention to the body during the times or waiting moments. When there is a challenge, before any reaction, we pay attention to our inner body, which causes awareness to come out of the mind. When we notice our feelings, do we judge them or not? It means whether we feel blame, pity, or annoyance or not. If the answer is yes, it means that we are feeding it. That is, we feed the statue of pain. It means either we have not forgiven ourselves or others. First, we must forgive everything and everyone, and then pay attention to our inner body. This is the meaning of Christ's word, which says, "Forgive before you go to the temple." Another benefit of paying attention to the inner body is slowing down the aging process of the physical body. When we don't pay attention to the past and the future, the mass of time doesn't accumulate in our psyche and cells. So, when we are in the inner body, the outer body also ages later. Another benefit of paying attention to the internal body is strengthening the immune system. The body is fascinated by our attention. With our attention, every single cell wakes up and starts to be happy, and this means self-healing. When a master is not in his house, suspicious people live in his house. So, when we are not present in the inner body, uninvited guests take up residence. In addition to the exercise of always being in the body, there's also a meditation to strengthen the body's defense system. Lie on your back, close your eyes, and focus on each of the different parts of the body for 15 seconds. So that focus rotates all around the body like a wave, and you can feel the inner body as a single energy field. If for a moment the mind can pull our attention away from the inner body and immerse us in thoughts, it's okay. Return the attention to the inner body again. If it is difficult for us to pay attention to the inner body, we can start by focusing on breathing. When using the mind, let's focus our attention on the inner body from time to time. It means to stop thinking for a moment and pay attention to the inner body and start using the mind again, which makes the power of mind multiply and make it creative. There are various gateways to enter or become one with absolute consciousness, which Eckhart calls that the unmanifested trap or timelessness, one of which is attention to the inner body as explained. Surrender means letting go of mental resistance to whatever is, which is another gate. Being in the present moment is another gate. We need one gate, not all these gates. Paying attention to silence is another gate. Even when speaking, we must pay attention to the silence between words. There is no sound without silence. The same definition exists for nothing and everything. This concept is further explained with an example. See what is the nature of the room you are in. The floor, walls, and ceiling are the boundaries of the room. The furniture of the room is inside the room, but it is not the room. The room is the space or nothing without which the others cannot exist. Therefore, nothing can exist without anything or without unmanifested or without absolute awareness. Space and silence are two sides of nothing. In fact, they are the manifestation of inner space and inner silence. If there was only silence, we couldn't understand what silence is. Or if it was only space and there was nothing in space, we would not be able to understand what it is. So, when thing came into being, then the nothing got identified. So, the unmanifested one created the things or the revealed to get known. So, when we pay attention to the inner space, the inner silence, or the nothingness within us, and become one with it, we become one with the same unmanifested Lord. We are actually here to reveal the divine intention for the creation of the universe. In addition to these voluntary gates to become one with absolute consciousness or the unmanifested one, as we said, such as paying attention to the inner body and surrendering, there are also involuntary gates to become one, such as dreamless sleep and death. Eckhart Tolle says that even if we have missed all the opportunities for spiritual awakening during our life, the last gate will open for us immediately after death. This is the tunnel of light and indescribable peace described by people who have had a near-death experience. This gate opens momentarily, and if we haven't been faced that unrevealed dimension during our life, we will not notice it and we will be afraid and lose the awareness. In fact, each of these gates that we said is the gate of death, death of the false inner me. When we pass through the gates of death, we separate from the mind and understand that death is an illusion. The desire for perfection makes us think that our romantic relationship will make us perfect. Physically, yes, but because we are either woman or man, and with romantic relationships, we come closer to becoming one or perfect. But addiction to another person shouldn't be confused with love. At the beginning of a romantic relationship, we feel perfection and euphoric for a while, but little by little, the inner me begins to feel lack and need again, and the sense of euphoria caused by the sense of the perfection due to the romantic relationship fades. If we are in love, we cannot attack our partner, so this isn't love, and my inner need for perfection is temporarily fulfilled by another person. Now, if the other party cannot fulfill my inner need, the effect of this drug is lost. But this doesn't mean to refrain from relationships, because 3 failed relationships may bring us closer to awakening than to imprison ourselves alone for 3 years. If this loneliness can have the presence in the present moment for us, it is beneficial. If we experience and learn to be present in the present moment, then we can stop judging ourselves and our partner and accept our partner completely. And then the space for love and peace will be created. Of course, love is within us and doesn't depend on another body or external form. If we reach the presence, we can feel the oneness in every being and have a feeling of being one with them, which is love. Love shines on everyone like the sun and doesn't see anyone as special. It is not exclusive. Exclusiveness is the characteristic of the love of the me inside. But the intensity of love that can be felt can be different. For example, when we feel this love more in a person and he also or she has the same feeling, these are called romantic relationship. It's the same bond that connects us to the person next to us on the bus or to a bird and a tree. Only intensity is different. If we have problems in relationships, we should use that problem as a spiritual exercise. For example, if we experience anger and jealousy, we should recognize and observe it and recognize our own reaction. If we accept that relationships are meant to inform us and not to make us happy, then relationship become productive for us. When our partner behaves out of ignorance, we should not judge him or her because judging makes us identify him or her with his behavior. In this case, instead of fighting the darkness, we have shone light on it. If this is done as a spiritual exercise by both parties, it is wonderful, and then we can freely express our thoughts and feelings without being offended or reacting. Living with an enlightened person is not easy for the inner me of the other side because the inner self needs resistance to be seen, but a person who has reached enlightenment has no resistance. The inner self of the statue of pain, the inner self or the statue of the pain needs to be nourished, and enlightened person doesn't feed it. Usually in men, it is the thinking mind, and in women, pain statues prevent reaching clairvoyance. The statue of pain is both personal and collective. For example, the pain statue of countries that have violence and war is different from others. And if people identify themselves with this pain statue, and are not aware of it, continuous or periodic emotional pains are constantly reminded, and depending on whether the pain statue is active or not, can be cause of violence or the victim of violence. But these potential individuals have a stronger motivation to wake up. Eckhart Tolle says that during the menstrual cycle, pain statue is activated in women, both physically and emotionally. If they can see themselves from this statue, they will approach clairvoyance much sooner and easier. The statue of collective pain in women is caused by men's past violence against them. However, it belongs to the past and closes the way to enlightenment. We must be aware of the statue of pain. It means to recognize it as soon as it wakes up. Attention means acceptance. When we put a piece of wood on fire, it turns into fire. In the same way, when we pay attention to the statue of pain, we turn it into awareness. The partner can be a help during this time. That is, when the statue of pain woke up and even attacked him, he consciously sees the statue of pain and knows that she is separated from her statue of pain and doesn't react. Women can also help their husbands regain his consciousness from the mind by drawing his attention to the here and now while he is immersed in his thoughts, and this relationship greatly increases the awareness of both parties. Eckhart Tolle explains that when bad things happens, that is, something happens that is a bad thing from the point of view of the mind, there's no need to deny it and accept it as it is. This doesn't mean that something bad has happened in our mind and we feel happy, but it means that despite this bad thing in our mind, we feel calm. You can never argue with an enlightened person because he or she is in absolute acceptance. Discussing means becoming one with the mind and creating a mental position and reacting and resisting the other person's mental position. An enlightened person says his point of view clearly and firmly, but doesn't tend to continue to react, defend, or attack. Usually, growth is considered positive, but if the growth were to continue in any way, it would become a gigantic and destructive phenomenon. So, destruction is necessary for new growth. We must have failed somewhere deeply or experienced pain or lack to be drawn into the spiritual dimension. Or sometimes, diseases are meant to force us to stop so that the necessary regeneration can take place. The things of this world are all impermanent, Buddha and Christ also acknowledge it. For example, Jesus said that you shouldn't leave your treasure on the ground where willows and rust will eat it and thieves will rob it. When we think something or a situation is good, which means that our mind thinks it is good, the mind attaches itself to it and we identify ourselves with it and become happy. But since nothing is stable, with the loss of those conditions, the mind also attaches itself to this destroyed state and shows resistance, as if a part has been separated from the body. It means that we couldn't distinguish between this life and the conditions of life. When everything in this world becomes absurd and pointless in our opinion, we are one step away from sadness and depression, and also one step away from enlightenment. In short, peace is when we don't resist what is and accept all situation and things. When we reach this inner peace and the internal dependence on forms disappears, the external conditions improve greatly. Negativity and resistance are almost synonymous. Negativity only reinforces the ego. Because of this, the mind shows that this resistance and negativity is supposed to make the situation better for us, when it is not. Negativity is not natural. Have you seen a depressed plant or an animal that has anxiety or negativity? Except for the animals that are closely related to humans and are familiar with the mind and the madness of the mind. From plants and animals, we should learn to surrender and be in the present moment. For example, ducks swim peacefully on the water, and even if they fight, one of them probably entered the privacy of the other, and the fight is momentary, and both of them separated after a moment and beat their wings together to release the negative energy. They don't have the past in their minds and continue calmly in the present moment. Repeating negative emotions or illness has a message for us that we should be more present in the present moment. Whenever negativity occurs, look at it as a reminder to be in the present moment. If we couldn't release that negative energy, accept it or pay attention to its reaction and impact. For example, the sudden sound of the car alarm bothers us. Why? Because the mind wants it. The mind has an unaware belief that resistance to the situation or negativity will improve the situation, while this is an illusion. Hearing the sound of the burglar alarm and the noise of the children and the noise of the street when it doesn't face our resistance is not annoying and just passes. Or when someone says something hurtful to us, if we don't resist and let it pass us by, this is forgiveness. If we want, we can tell him or her that his or her behavior is unacceptable, but he or she no longer has the power to dominate our inner state. The surface of a deep lake may be calm or stormy, but the depth of the lake is always calm. By separating from our mind, we become that deep lake. When we accept our own being, our relationship with other people will also improve, because behind the behavior of others, we see their being, which is the same as our being. Likewise with other beings, and this is actually the same empathy with all creations. Eckhart sees dying before death as a deep meditation on the perishability of the material body and says that this is one of the most powerful spiritual exercises. In this deep meditation, we understand that body is decaying and annihilating while we are still there and present, a divine and awake presence. He explained empathy in such a way that in empathy, seemingly opposite feelings like sadness and happiness mix with each other and become inner peace, or that we are in the realm of forms, so in mortality with the creatures we share. You see, we share in being with the rest of the creature in eternal existence, with two opposite things simultaneously. In fact, true empathy occurs when true happiness is beyond the forms, which means the manifestation of the happiness of eternal life. The body and death are both illusions that originated from my inner consciousness, and one cannot believe in one and escape from the other. There is no need to run away from the body because it is the body that brings us to the original source. It's like when we see an angel and mistake it for a stone statue. Instead of looking somewhere else, we should make our vision closer to see the angel. Our faith makes our whole world. When we believe in the body and death, the animals that have a body also die. This unity of witness and evidence is called. That is, by changing the observation method, the object of observation shows different behavior. In this way, according to countless consciousness, there are countless co-worlds, and all these worlds are intertwined. There are beings whose vibration and consciousness are so different from us that neither we are aware of their existence nor they are aware of our existence. Beings with high consciousness who are aware of their connection with the origin and with each other are in a world that, in our opinion, is heaven, and all these worlds are ultimately one. When collective consciousness changes, nature also changes. Right now, the inner misconsciousness dominates the world, and that's why fear reigns. According to Buddha, eventually every tree and blade of grass will become enlightened. Our task is to become aware of the oneness of our inner self with our original being. After this awakening, we enjoy the pleasure of the world without fear of losing them. After this awakening, when someone does ignorant behavior in our present, we don't feel the need to react to him, and as a result, we don't make that ignorant behavior a reality. Eckhart Tolle says that the impact of what we are in the world is much greater than the impact of our behavior and speech. It means that our existence has a higher impact. For example, when a hungry person asks for a piece of bread and we give him bread, the important thing is to share in being. Here, the bread is a symbol of being, and this is the same empathy that causes deep healing for both. And in fact, there is no giver or receiver. Filth is the result of ignorance, evil like hunger and violence. We must eliminate the cause of this evil in addition to its apparent result. This true transformation takes place within and not without. If we only focus on the outside world and destroy the result of this we will be disappointed. In other words, without a fundamental change in human consciousness, the suffering of the world is like an endless well. To destroy ignorance, just like you cannot fight against darkness, you can't get anywhere with resistance. Either we should increase awareness by spreading information, or when we are sure that we do not have resistance, negativity, and hatred from within, we should passively resist. In explaining the concept of submission, he says that this is not the general situation that needs to be accepted, but only the present moment. For example, if we get stuck in mud, giving up doesn't mean saying, let me stay in mud, but it means not labeling that moment, not judging it, accepting it, and doing our best without judgment. Not giving up makes the me inside strong, and everything sees it as a threat because it judges everything. This is good and that is bad. This resistance and lack of surrender affects even the physical body and dries the body. When the situation is unfavorable, ask ourselves, what can we do to improve the situation? If the answer is yes, let's do it. That is, focus only on what can be done in the present moment. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't plan, but perhaps planning is something we should do now. We should not separate from the present moment and imagine ourselves in the future. Surrender is different with concepts like, I don't care anymore, it doesn't matter, because these kind of words have negativity and there is suffering in them. The first exercise in surrender is observing our own resistance. When we witness it, we will see that resistance is useless, and according to the present moment, unavert resistance becomes avert. Because consciousness and negativity cannot be together. Time causes unhappiness. With awareness and presence in the present moment, unhappiness disappears. When we surrender, the energy that was released from us governs life, which has a much higher vibration than the energy of our mind. The energy of the mind says that nothing is good, but when enough people enter a state of surrender and release negativity, a new world will emerge that is full of spiritual energy. Another example of surrender is surrendering to illness. It means to let go of the past and the future. It means not to label. In this case, the disease, physical pain, and weakness will decrease in the present moment. If we have a serious illness, we should not feel that we have failed and feel guilty or blame life for injustice, but use it to achieve clarity. That is, practice conscious presence with it. Usually, a crisis can be break my inner shell and finally wake up. After a time when deep pain and suffering occurred, we should look at it as an opportunity to turn the metal of our existence into gold. And this means surrender, not to be indifferent to the situation, but to accept the situation as it is and not to label it mentally and do anything. Let's do what needs to be done, or if external conditions are unyielding, let us submit to the internal conditions. It means to accept the pain and suffering and the sadness that is there, and to surrender to see the miracle of turning pain into peace. If we don't accept that pain and just try to escape it by doing other things, the pain will go from our behavior and speech and will be emitted, and it affects others, which cause others to attack us or we harm them. Accepting suffering is a journey towards death of the inner me. Surrender means the revelation of the Lord, because by surrendering and accepting and giving up resistance, the dominance of the inner self or the mind over us is over, and the being is revealed. Choice arises when there is awareness. Otherwise, if the mind dominates us or if we are unaware, there would be no choices. And in fact, the old patterns of our mind keep creating similar events, and that is the reason that for some people, unfortunate events are constantly repeated. That is either the old pattern of the mind, the beliefs left in the mind from childhood, or our conditioned past causes the repetition of these events. In the end, how do we know that we surrender? When we don't have a question to ask, it means we surrender.